Good evening, all. I welcome you all to the webinar which is brought to you by Hamstech. Before we start, I would like to thank the FICCI FLO Hyderabad chapter and Ms. Sona Chatwani. I would like to point out that this webinar is specially curated by FLO Hyderabad chapter. So, I would like to tell you that we are going to learn about mobile photography today. So before we start, I would like to take you through all the steps that we'll be learning or we'll be going through as such. We'll be going through the few basics of photography, which will help you to, build better images with just your phones. I will give you some tips as well as few pointers to make sure that you take better photos. I will give you some inputs and information about how can you play around with your phone or what equipments you can use with your phone to make sure that your photos look better than what you usually take. And lastly, I will give you a certain kind of list which will make sure that the apps which you are using are the best in the market but which are free to use. So let's start. So let's start with the photography basics. First and foremost, the very basic and very the father of all the rules is the rule of thirds. Then we come to the rule of odds, rule of space, viewpoint, and fill the frame. These are, please understand that these are the guidelines. These aren't the rules as such, but these are the guidelines which will guide you towards the path of taking better photos altogether at the end. So, rule of thirds. I'm pretty sure all of you must have seen these four lines in your phone now and then. You must have, tumbled across some settings, or you must have, gone through some buttons on your phone, or if you have ever seen a DSLR camera, you must have seen these four grids, these four lines which make a grid on the phone. So what are these grids? This I hope I'm audible because okay, first of all let's just test the audio. Yeah, I think I'm audible to all of you now. Yeah, so before we dive into all of this, I would like you to tell these four lines which are present in your phone or on your grids or on your LCD screens, they are there for a reason. So rule of thirds is nothing, it's just that you have to make sure that your subject is placed on one of those lines. Like if you see on the screen, if you can follow my cursor, you can see the subject, the B here is falling on one of those lines here. And the intersection of those lines, the very main point or the very main part of your subject should fall on the intersecting points. Let's see at an example here. If you can see the body of the bee and the legs are falling roughly on the line which is vertical towards your right, but the eye of the bee is falling on the intersecting point. So what does that mean? You have to compose your photographs with your points of the interest at the intersection of the grid lines or along on the grid lines. You have to make sure that the main subject of your whole frame, it should always fall on one of these four lines or alongside of it, or it should be parallel to it, or in other words it should just follow these grid lines, as simple as that, nothing else. Most phone will allow you to turn these grid lines on and off in a camera. There are various kinds of grid lines present in cameras, in your phones, in the applications, etc. But always go for the rule of thirds because it is far by far the best rule to follow. Very best rule, very simple, very basic. Coming on to the rule of odds. The rule of odds is very interesting. The reason being, it tells you how much of subject or what's the number of subject you should include when it comes to a photograph. If you are sort of choosing an odd number, the viewer will always look at the photograph twice because commonly, like the way we are growing up nowadays, we have a psychology of looking at things which are symmetry. which are symmetrical, which have even numbers out. But the moment you put the odd numbers out in the frame, in any one of your photograph, the photo stands out automatically. In addition to that, it creates a visual triangle. Now, what is a visual triangle, if you may ask? A triangle consists three points, right? So it's an odd number. So if you include three subjects or number of three subjects in your whole frame, like dice 1, 2, or 3. If there are three flowers here, if there are three bulbs here, the whole photograph has a whole new meaning to it. The photograph will look better. It's plain simple psychology trick that most of the photographers, most of the product photographers, they use. Now you can use this in your day-to-day life. How can you use it? You can make sure the whatever you're shooting, it can be in a group of 3 or in a group of odd number. Try not to go overboard, like 11. You don't try not to include as many products as more than 10, to be honest. That's my sincere suggestion. Okay, now if you look at the rule of thirds part here and the rule of odds, those have a bit common. You can easily play around with both of these rules. The rule of thirds, if you see very carefully, it has 4 grid lines, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. That means 4 vertical and 4 horizontal with 4 intersecting points. Similarly, the rule of odds have 1 less subject than 4. Like you can go for 3, you can go for 5 or 7, and so on. So the main subject out of the odd numbers, if my main subject is, let's just say, the dice which is in front, it has to fall on the rule of thirds grid line. These flowers are also falling alongside the rule of thirds grid line. If you turn the rule of thirds horizontally, these two bulbs are also falling on the line of the rule of thirds. As simple as that. So that's how you can use rule of thirds and rule of odds together to take one good image. Okay, now let's move on to the rule of space. Now again, I would like to point out here that rule of thirds and rule of space can go hand in hand. How, you may ask? If you see all the pictures here, first of all, the motion at where they are going, like an elephant is moving to its right hand side to the screen. So we have an empty space towards where the elephant is going. We have an empty space towards where the bicycle is jumping. We have an empty space towards where the boat is floating. So you have to make sure that you give the space for the motion of your subject. What does that mean? It means if your subject is moving from right to left, you have to give some space on the left hand side. If your subject is moving from left to right, you have to give some space towards the right. As simple as that. But this rule will also be more effective, more efficient, and the photographs which fall into these rules will also be more attractive if you combine it with rule of thirds. Look at the elephant, it is falling exactly at the intersecting points, which is a rule of thirds. The bicycle is also falling along the horizontal line of rule of thirds. The boat which you see here, it is also falling on the horizontal line of the rule of thirds. So if you combine rule of thirds alongside with the rule of space, it will somehow automatically make sure that your photograph will look better and will capture more attention. Viewpoint. Now, we all are used to looking at certain things in certain angle. We all usually see other things either from an eye level or top to down. But rarely we have a case where we use or utilize a unique space or unique way of looking at the things. If you see, all of these photographs have a unique perspective. You can go low, you can try a bottom shot, you can try a top shot, Just experiment with your phone. Just experiment with a camera phone. Try to point your camera phone towards a direction or towards the angle where very less people would think that it is possible. For example, if you see the photograph of these skyscrapers in New York, rarely we see such kind of point of view where all the buildings are trying to reach the same point at the same point. All the buildings are leading you to the very center point right here. This is a classic example of how you can use the angle of your phone and your position as a photographer. If you position yourself right at the right point or at the right step or at the right location, and if you can turn your camera up and down or in a certain angle or in a certain perspective, your photograph will be much better. Let's just take another example of the cat. We are used to seeing cats on their 4 feet, and we hardly can imagine any cat getting cozy or being very very homely sort of creature. But if you change the angle upside down, the cat automatically gets the look that you're aiming for. Now if you could have just shot this image, the cat image, if I may, in a normal perspective, the image wouldn't have been so attractive as it is right now. But the photographer chose to make sure that the camera is upside down and the whole perspective changed. Similarly with the breakfast setting, if you see the person is holding a cup of coffee, a kettle, a nice magazine, there's a nice tablecloth and a bowl of cereal. Now if he could have shot the same image from a 45-degree angle, the image wouldn't have the same impact right now. The amount of information that we get from the same setting, from the same phone would be different. But just because the photographer chose to point the camera upside down, trying to get a nice flat way view, the photograph is automatically looking a much better angle. Now you may ask, how come the rule of thirds is applied in all these things? How come the rule of space is applied in all those things? Let's just see. Now the cat is lying alongside one of the grid lines of rule of thirds. If you can just visualize the 4 grid lines passing through this image, you can see the cat is automatically lying on one of the 4 grid lines which we use in rule of thirds. Similarly, if you see the buildings, all the buildings somehow connect towards the end point because of the viewpoint, and all the buildings are falling on the lines of the grids. Similarly, with the image of the breakfast setting, if you look at the hand, if you look at the cereal bowl, the magazine, every intersecting point on the grid line is automatically taking your eye towards the hand, towards the magazine, towards the cereal bowl. So if you can use all these rules very specifically, with more focus, with more appreciation towards the space, towards the subject, your photograph will be much more better. Just for revision's sake, I'll try to go through all these slides again. I'll try to make sure that you understand the rules in a very minimal words once more. When it comes to rule of thirds, it's very simple. You have to make sure that your subject is falling on the alongside lines of the grid. This grid can be easily switched on and switched off in any camera, in any phone camera application. Now, if you just forget the grid lines for a moment, you can see the intersecting points right here, point 1, point 2, point 3 and point 4. There are 4 points right here. So if your subject is falling on the line of the grid, just try to make sure the main part of your subject is falling on the intersection of these 4 lines. Speaking of the same concept, the subject is not hard and fast. The subject should always be aligned or should always be perpendicular or parallel to any of the 4 lines. Just try to align it a bit alongside with one of these 4 lines. That's it. Follow the same rule with rule of odds. The very shortest version of this rule is compose for photographs with an odd number of subjects to make them more appealing. I have already explained you why does these subjects look more appealing when it's an odd number, because psychology says that as humans we tend to appreciate, or we tend to uh, bend towards the artwork which has odd numbers in it. If you want to make your photograph more better, you can combine rule of odds and rule of thirds all together. Rule of space. The simpler way to tell you this is, make sure that you give space towards the motion of your subject. If your subject is moving from right to left, just give some empty space towards the right, towards the left. If your subject is moving from left to right, just give some space towards the right of your subject. This would make sure that your viewer will know what your subject is walking towards, what your subject is aiming for. Viewpoint. Viewpoint is just trying to achieve a unique perspective. Try to point your camera in different directions, in different angles, in different positions. The moment you do this, you will automatically start experimenting with your phone. You will automatically start experimenting with your LCD screen. You will start getting a different kind of pictures, and you will learn to approach any setting from a different point of view. Now, fill the frame. The last point of the rules which you can follow when it comes to phone photography. Now, sometimes what happens is your subject is either way too small, or it has lot of information. So how do you tackle this issue where you want to shoot a very nice sunflower, but the moment you try to shoot the sunflower, the background distracts your photograph. The background is maybe the background has a lot of vehicles, maybe background has a lot of people in it, maybe you're shooting in middle of the traffic, whatever it is. When such situation comes, try to get closer to your subject. Try to focus on only your subject. The moment you do that, your photograph will reveal the details. Excuse me. Yeah, your photographs will reveal the details, the textures, the color of your subject. Let's take the first example of sunflower. I'm sure we all must have visualized the texture of the sunflower seed, the texture of the sunflower petal, but capturing it is only possible if you can get closer to it. Now, when you talk about peacock or any bird, their feathers, their texture of their feathers, the colors of their feathers, they are something which is very unique from bird to bird. If you can get closer to certain bird and try to make sure that you fill the frame with those birds, it will definitely make sure that your photograph is better than whatever you have been shooting by going wide angle. You can use this technique which is called fill the frame in lot of scenarios, but please make sure that you understand this is not a getaway, or this is not an escape from rule of thirds or rule of odds or viewpoint. This is just to make sure that you are able to get closer to your subject to get a better photograph if you are not able to get a better photograph with a wide angle. Now, lot of phones which we have has an optical zoom. You can utilize that, or you can physically just walk near the subject and make sure that you get close to it. Now, playing with phone. Now, this is where I will explain you how can you experiment and how can you make sure that your phone has, that you are taking out the best of your phone camera. Now, if you look very carefully, we have lot of options here: panorama, auto, we have super slow motion, we have a video capturing ability, we have a button which will switch the front camera with the back camera. If you see very carefully, here it is written X2. That means it means the 2x zoom. If you click on that, your camera will optically zoom into any frame 2 times. The moment we say 2x, 10x, 5x, it means it will zoom in your subject 2 times or 5 times or 10 times. If you try to go close, if you try to zoom Bit more than that, your photo will either get blurry or it will not focus. These are the two issues that a lot of you might face or must have faced, that you're shooting something nice scene, there is a nice scenery in front of you, there is a festival going on, and you try to zoom in with your camera, with your phone camera, and when you look at the picture, it is either blurry, it has noise in it, it is pixelated, or it is just not good enough. So there's a reason for it. To avoid that, just press this button once, and still if you are not satisfied with the optical zoom, then I would suggest you to walk few steps further. This will help your photograph look better. Now, before you start to take any images, you have to make sure certain things. First of all, always clean your lens. Always make sure the lens behind your phone is always clean. Why? Because we have a habit of placing our phone on the tables, on the surfaces, which is not clean. Your phone camera will always collect a certain amount of dust or scratches. How to avoid that? It's just simple. You just carry a bottle of sanitizer or a cleaning liquid with you, and you can use a soft paper or a piece of cloth to clean your lens whenever you're planning to shoot. Now, it is obvious to understand that most of the time we don't have a good amount of light in the whole situation, right? So to tackle that, you can always buy a small piece of LED from Amazon, from eBay. You can also go to some local store and they will have a plug-in LED panel for you for your phone. The moment you use such panels, what will happen is your phone will get better kind of light scenarios. Your photos will be better lit. Your photos will have better shadows, better highlights, and better midtones. Your photos will just basically look more alive than it usually looks. Now, when you're shooting at night or when you're shooting in, let's just say, in hurry, you sort of, you shake your hand a lot. We don't have a habit of holding our hands still for a longer period of time. So it results into a shaky photo. It results into a blurry photo, right? So to avoid that, you can always use Gorilla Pod, a selfie stick, maybe a phone stand or a phone tripod. This will make sure that all your photographs are very steady. There is no shake, there is no blur at all, and you can spend your time you can spend your time in thinking about a creative way of shooting a subject rather than worrying about keeping your hands steady. Now, attachments. I will, as we go ahead, there are a lot of cell phone attachments. We have macro lens, we have fisheye lenses, we have telephoto lenses, and if you add these attachments to your kit, this will automatically expand the view of, this will automatically expand the whole scenario or the whole capability of you to shoot a picture. Macro lens will try to make macro lens will make sure that you get closer to your subject very minutely. You can see the crooks and the edges, you can see the cracks, you can see the textures, you can see how light bounces off the subject very easily. Fisheye lens will give you a very wide angle look. It will go wider than what your phone is normally capable of. Telephoto lenses will give you it will help you to optically zoom into your subject without stretching your photograph. It will help you to capture a photograph by zooming in without destroying it. This is the same issue which you used to face before by optically zooming in way too much. You just need to put in your telephoto lens and just press one time on 2x zoom, and there you are. You're closer to your subject, way closer to your subject than you can actually get with, swiping your two fingers on the screen. Now, the photography apps that you can use, your camera app, to be honest, in my suggestion, is amazing, because if you try to install a third-party application on your phone which will help your camera to get a better pictures, your camera tend to lag, your cameras tend to capture a bit edgy images. But still, if you're interested in exploring, I'll tell you a few applications. First is obviously your phone's camera application, which is by far, I would suggest, the best way to go. Second is Camera Plus, which will give you a wide variety of exploring the whole filters. It will help you to explore the color saturation part as well. Now, most of us, we don't use Instagram camera to shoot images, but you'll be shocked to realize how well programmed an Instagram camera application actually is. If you swipe on Instagram towards your right hand side, you can open the camera app in your Instagram application itself. Instagram camera app is well tuned to make sure that you capture all the details in shadows which are very dark. You can still get details in those kind of places. Another app which I would like to suggest is Camera Awesome. Now this app is rarely used, but if you want to try, you should give this application a try, because this will again teach you and it will help you to expand your horizon beyond just clicking or beyond just pressing a couple of buttons. Now in editing applications, my personal favorite is Snapseed. The reason being, the first reason, it is powered by Google, and it will give you far much variety to edit your photographs. Camera Plus is again a very wonderful application. Make sure that you install the recent one. If you already are using Camera Plus application to edit, please update that because it is improved a lot. Then Photo Gen 2 is another better application. But in my opinion, you should always go with Snapseed, and you should always combine Snapseed with your camera phone application. Now, quick tips to overcome the limitations. Zoom with your feet, not your camera. I guess I have already told you this. Try to zoom in with your feet, like walk closer to your subject instead of just swiping your two fingers on the screen. Because if you do that, your photo will obviously be blurry, it will obviously be edgy, and it will pixelate. So do not waste time in trying to zoom in and get a better picture. Just walk near your frame or walk near your subject and try to take a better shot. Hold on to your phone very still. I have again told you this, if your hands are shaky and you know that you cannot hold on to your phone very still, then you should use an external help like tripod, gorilla pod, or selfie stick, etc. The moment you fill the frame, you end up isolating your subject, and that is exactly what you should aim for. Try to isolate your subject. I do not mean try to take your subject on the black or white background. What I mean by that, if you go closer to your subject and if you fill the whole frame with only your subject, what will happen is your viewer will only look at your main subject. You will tell your viewer where to look. And add attachments. Obviously, these attachments which comes with your phone, they are very cheap. They are easy to come by. You can buy it online. You can buy it in your mobile stores very easily. But these attachments will make sure that your photos look better, and it will help you a lot. Few amazing phones with amazing cameras. Now, I have tried to make sure that I include the flagship phones as well as a reasonable phone range as well. The first and foremost, honestly, is iPhone 11 Pro, then Google Pixel 4, Huawei P3 Pro, Xiaomi Mi Note 10, Oppo Reno 10X Zoom, and Sony Xperia 5. This list of phone is completely based only on their ability to take better pictures. Please keep in mind that if you really want to take phone photography or mobile photography seriously, or if you want to really explore it as a hobby, you should definitely go with one of these phones till today's date. Now, if I'm not wrong, OnePlus 7 has already come up with OnePlus 8. So I'm pretty sure the camera on that is also great. So depending on your budget, you can go with any of the phones that you like. Each phone and each camera has its own advantages and own disadvantages. I would suggest you to visit a nearby local store, explore the camera options there, and choose for yourself. Now, camera, when we talk about DSLR, it has its own pros and cons. When we talk about mobile camera, it has its own pros and cons. Till now, I have told you everything about how you can make your photograph better. But there are a few things that you need to tackle on your own with with the help of your creativity and with the help of your friends and people around you. First of all, your phone camera needs a lot of light to capture good image. Now, to tackle this, you can either use a continuous light source like LED, the way I showed you in the previous slides. If you choose LED panels, if you buy them from local stores, it will be a great help for you. Let's just say if you don't have a LED with you, then what do you do? Try to go for a continuous light source like tungsten bulb. We can find the LED bulbs. We can go for the tube lights as well, or else you can play around with the sunlight, which is, to be honest, till now the best source of light. You can manipulate it however you want. If you are shooting at the noon, you get a white light. If you're shooting in the evening, you get amazing yellow kind of light. So the limitations are there, but there is a way around the whole limitation scene. First, as I told you, if you need lot of light, how to get it. Now, second is shaky hands and moving subjects are an issue. Definitely it's an issue. I've already told you how to tackle them. You can tackle them with tripods, gorilla pod, or selfie stick, or you can just learn to be very still with your hands. No optical zoom. If you zoom in way too much with your fingers or with your camera, with your the mobile system, then your photo will not come out good. Just take some steps ahead and get closer to your subject. That's the best advice that I can give you. Shutter lag. Now, most of the time you must have faced this. When you click the photo doesn't get clicked immediately. It gets clicks after a couple of seconds. Like, it's a bit late. It's late by few seconds, but sometimes those few seconds can cost you amazing photograph. Let's just say you're shooting a bird which is sitting on a balcony, and that bird is very rare, and you want to shoot it. The moment you click the shutter, the moment you click the button of your camera, it will not take the photo, and the bird will just fly away. You will miss the great shot. So this is one condition that you will face a lot in your phones. The way to tackle this is make sure that you keep your phone systems upgraded. Always upgrade your camera application as soon as possible and as much as possible. Always look for better camera applications. I have already given you the list. You can go through those lists and make sure that you have a better solution for it. Flashes on smartphone are generally atrocious. I agree to this. So try not to use flashes, because phone flashes, I would not call them a flash. I would call them a phone torch, because it just gives out a burst of light, then it goes off, right? It does not have anything, what you say. It is just not very flattering. When you click a photo with your phone flash, the photo which comes out is not that flattering, it's not that good looking. The reason being the fact the camera flash does not understand what you're shooting, how you're shooting it. So I would suggest you to go for an LED small panel which you get anywhere in the store or online, or you can utilize the artificial lights like tube light bulbs, LED bulbs, etc. Obviously you cannot get very close to your subject. If you're shooting a nice scenery, if you've gone for a campaign and if you're shooting a nice scenery, you obviously cannot go ahead and get closer to your subject a lot of times. If you're shooting wildlife, nature, if you're photo lens, which I told you before in the attachments, in the slide of attachments. Now we will look into different kind of modes of camera that we have in our current phones, like in iOS, in Android as well. Let's talk about the iPhone first. The iPhones have all the iPhones nowadays are coming up with 4 to 5 settings. The first is natural light, which is the default setting. Then comes the studio light. What it does, it brightens the facial features. It makes your face brighter. It uplifts if there are any marks, if there are any marks or wrinkles, if there are any blurry, like if there's a fog, it sort of makes sure that your facial features are lifted up. If it is brightened up, it removes the disturbance which is in front of your camera or which might be on the lens. Then comes a counter lighting. What it means, it just adds drama to the image by adding a directional light. What do you mean by directional light? It gives a light, or it gives it eliminates all the lights which is coming on your face or which is coming in your photograph, and it just adds a light coming from one direction. It will give a dramatic effect to your photo. Then comes a stage lighting, which is a spotlight essentially. It will make you look as if you're standing in a studio with a black background behind you. Then comes stage mono. It is same as stage lighting, it's just the monochrome. What do I mean by monochrome is black and white. Now I'll show you a few examples. If you see, we have a natural light, good features to your faces. Now stage light and stage light mono are a bit difficult to understand, or it's not difficult as per, but it is difficult to execute. The reason being the AI technology, artificial intelligence technology in our camera is not yet advanced to understand how to cut our hair out. Lot of times, if you must have seen the photograph which you're taking or which you're shooting, you can see the smudges on the hair or on your t-shirt. The way you can see here, if you can see here the smudges of the darkness, if you can see on his neck, there is something wrong with his neck right here. So it is because we lack the AI technology right now. But if I'm not wrong, the recent iPhones and OnePlus phones, they are amazing with this. They are improving, they're trying to improve their cameras with each version of the phone. And I'm pretty sure that they can do a better job. Now, if I'm not wrong, most of you must have seen this under your setting toolbar, right? Now, I'll go one by one explaining what each icon means. The very first icon means the photo ratio. 4 is to 3, 16 is to 9, 1 is to 1, 19 is to 9. Now these ratios are various from phone to phone, camera to camera. What it tells you is basically what is the dimension of your frame. My suggestion for you, if you're planning to shoot photos and upload it on Instagram, my suggestion for you is to go for 4 is to 5 ratio. 4 is to 5 is the ratio that Instagram has. It is a ratio that that Instagram will make sure that your photo is good. It is looking good. The Instagram algorithm will not mess up your photograph. It will not blur your photograph. It will be as it is, as you shot. So try to go for an option that is 4 is to 5. If you don't have 4 is to 5 in your phone, try to crop your image in the 4 is to 5 ratio. Then the second option which we have is a timer. Now timer, you can use it in a various scenarios. You can use it to take your own photograph. You can use it to time the phone to shoot the photograph exactly when your subject is about to move. Let's just say you place the phone below on the floor and you set the timer to 3 seconds, and there are a lot of pigeons there. If you click the button, your phone will click a photo within 3 seconds. You have 3 seconds to clap and make sure the pigeons fly. The moment you do that, if your timing is right, you will get an amazing photo of all the pigeons flying at the same time towards the sky. Now, the third option is how you want to capture the photograph. Do you want to capture the photograph with a touch, with your voice, or with your palm, like palm gesture? So you can automatically, your phone will automatically sync to the touch setting, but you can change it under the tab of settings. Then it gives you an option where to save your photographs. My suggestion is obvious that you should always save your photographs in an SD card or external storage, or you should, after shooting them, if you like the photographs, always upload the photographs in the Google Drive or else in the iCloud. Then comes a time watermark or the model watermark. This thing will give a watermark on your photograph, or it will come under the information of the photograph, like who shot it, when they shot it, what was the time of the day, what was the date, and who was the person who was that you were shooting. Then it comes a mirrored selfie. It will just mirror your selfie. Like, you will have various mirror kind of effects, and it will help you to capture your selfie in a creative way. Then comes the sound setting. What kind of sound do you want when you click the button to take a photograph? That's what you have to set. I would always go for none, because the moment I click my phone camera, it should not make any sound to disturb anyone around me. Then comes the geographic location. Always keep this on, because it will help you to segregate your photos very fast and very easily. Then comes gender detection. Now gender detection will help you to identify, if you're shooting people, it will help you to identify in your phone when you're editing, or when you're segregating the photos. It will help you. It will always separate the female genders and the male genders separately. It will help you to segregate these things, and it will be easy for you to edit them in future. So it is on you what you set, but this is what I follow. Whenever I shoot from my phone, I always shoot it only for the Instagram. So I always keep my ratio to 4:5. I don't use the self timer, but whenever I use it to capture anyone's motion. I use a touch-based camera. I do not use palm recognition or voice recognition based clicking. I always save my photo in my SD card, and then I make sure that to upload it in a cloud. I always time watermark my photograph. I like to know when I shot it, where I shot it, what was the day, what was the time of the day. I hardly use mirrored selfie, because I don't shoot with the front camera as such. I make sure that my sound is zero. I do not like to disturb my subject or the people whom I'm shooting, or people who are surrounding me. My geographic location is always on, and my gender detection is always on. The reason being, I would like to, I like to make sure that it is easier for me to segregate and edit the images in future. Now, I would like to take you few couple of examples of shooting, how we can shoot a photograph at home to make sure that it is basic in this quarantine period, which is basic, but it can still come out to be pretty good. Okay, the first and foremost is preparation. Prepare your whole room, prepare your whole scene. Like, let's just say, for example, if you're shooting a sunglasses series, like if you want to shoot a sunglass right now, the way I'm trying to shoot here, I want a nice fairy lights behind my sunglasses to give it a bit dramatic look. The reason why I poured water below the sunglasses is to give a nice dramatic reflection to it. Now, I will just tap once on the screen on the place which I want to focus on. And obviously, I chose the portrait mode. The reason why I chose portrait mode is to make sure that I have maximum background blur. Now, the moment I moved further, this is what my phone told me, move further away, because portrait modes, according to your phones, according to the AI technology, artificial intelligence technology, there should be a minimal, just move a bit further away. Now, after doing that, I just wanted to explore the expert settings. Okay, when I went through that, I realized, no, I want to stick with the portrait mode itself. Now, let me tell you what expert mode settings are when it comes to the most of the Android phones, because I've already gone through the iPhones and iOS systems. Let's talk about Android phones. Now, if you see, we have something called EV, then we have something called AF, then WB, and then we have something called exposure. Now, let's start with exposure. Okay. Now, if you see somewhere here below, I have a reading which is saying 3200, and I have a reading here saying 1/15s. 1/15s means 1/15 seconds, and 3200 indicates the artificial light that my phone is adding to my image. Always try to make sure, if you're shooting in an expert mode, always try to make sure that 3200 is not, you should not go above 400 maximum in certain phones with a better camera like iPhones and all. But if you're shooting with an Android phone, you don't try to go beyond 2000. Okay, when it comes to seconds like 1.15 or 1/100 or 1 second and all, always try to keep it on auto, or always, experiment with it. Experiment with the slider till you get the preferred setting. AF means autofocus. Okay, autofocus will help you to focus on your subject, but you have an option here. You can slide the bar which is down below and adjust the focus, or you can click auto here or here and it will automatically pick up the focus point for you. So my suggestion is for you, always keep experiment with the slider first. Try to make sure that you are on the right path, right distance, and then you can focus on your subject. WB means white balance. When it comes to white balance, I always prefer to keep it on auto mode because it requires a bit of calculation or bit of prerequisite knowledge about the white balance. So if you have that knowledge, you can use it to your advantage and keep on the slider, keep on sliding the slider till you get the proper setting. If you don't have that requisite knowledge, not to worry, you can always go with the auto white balance, because auto white balance on any phone is just spot on. It will understand your surrounding very fast and it will automatically make sure that your white balance is perfect. Coming to EV, EV is exposure average. What I mean by that, if you click here, instead of clicking on exposure, it will again automatically take the exposure according to the phone or according to the artificial intelligence understanding. Your phone will understand this is the surrounding, this should be the average exposure reading, and it will set to it. Now, what do I mean by exposure? Let me explain you that. Exposure means how bright your photograph is, how bright or how dull your photograph is. That's it. So instead of going for EV, click on the exposure the way I told you before. Go with the settings here. Don't try to go beyond 200, sorry, don't try to go beyond 2000, and don't try to go below 1 by 15 seconds. Now, this is the image that I clicked. Right? It's a pretty okay image. It's nothing great. It's a very basic image. You can see a lot of reflections here. The glasses are old. The sunglasses are old. The background is a bit blurry, which is good. The reflections are nice. I liked it. I liked it. Okay. Then this is what it looks like after editing. So I'll toggle between these two images for you to understand the before and after. Now, I'll tell you what all changes I did. First of all, I cropped it into 4:5 ratio. As I told you, I would always crop any photo to 4:5, which is clicked with my phone. Once I've cropped any photo to 4:5, then what I do is I try to reduce the exposure, reduce the brightness of it. I try to reduce the brightness of the image. Why did I do that? Because there is lot of brightness here. You can see, right? There's so much of brightness in the background, here, in the reflections as well. So I reduce the brightness and I increase the contrast. And this is the image that it gave me. Now, you can achieve a better result to this if you have a branded product with you. If there was a person here, it would have been amazing shot. So try to experiment with your settings, try to experiment with your phones, try to experiment with your all the expert settings as well. Now, let's talk about, I have told you about the modes, the expert mode and the manual mode. I have talked about the portrait modes. You already know all of these things. But now let me point out one simple thing. As I told you before, always try to not optical zoom in your image. This is the biggest mistake that anyone can do if you're shooting with a phone. The reason being, the moment you shoot with optical zoom, what will happen? Your photo will be much more blurry and not up to the mark. Good. Now, tips for good photographs. Let me explain you few tips. Focus on the eye. Let's just say that you're shooting a portrait or you're shooting someone out of your family or your friends. Try to focus on the eye, because the moment you capture someone's eyes with nice details in it, then automatically your viewer tends to look at the photo for a more longer period of time. Your viewer will appreciate your efforts because eyes are visible and there is light in the eyes. If you can see very closely in both of these portraits, we have light here. There is a small reflections of lights in both of their eyes. So always try to capture that reflection in the eyes because that will make your photograph look alive. Then pay attention towards the lighting. If you can see, let's just take the first image, a man who's sitting with the phone. You can see a nice light coming below from the top, right? It's given nice evening kind of look to your whole photograph. Here we have used LED lights, which I told you, which comes with the phone. It is giving a nice soft looking light around the model's face completely. Choose the right background. Always choose the right background. Why? Because background will tell a lot about your subject. Maybe you're shooting a product, any fruit, any dishes, any person. Right background will tell you a lot about your subject. So try to choose a right background. Take your time. Don't rush towards your photograph. Don't rush that I want to click, click, click. Just wait, look around you, look at the backgrounds around you, and then ask your subject to stand in front of it. Try to change your perspective here and there, change the orientation of phone, vertical, horizontal, maybe cross, maybe top to bottom, bottom to top, and then you can figure out a proper background and perspective, and then you can click a photograph. You can use unfocusing or blurring of the image or out of focus image in a very creative way. You can tell a story with it. Like both the photos that you see here, it's telling a story, right? You can unfocus the photograph, you can blur the photograph, it's completely on you. So try to use this effect in your own, in your advantage. Don't just discard it. Experiment with it. Maybe you will get better shots. Capture or show the motion. Now, the reason why I mentioned this slide is because most of us, what we tend to do is we tend to capture still motion, still photographs, right? We tend to tell our friends or family to stand here and click their photos. We tend to tell our pets to sit and click their photos. Let them run around, let them walk, let them, just capture their day-to-day life motion. Just capture the motion. The moment you capture the motion, it gives life and a story to the whole photograph altogether. And your aim should be that to give a story and life to your photograph which you're shooting with your phones. Use reflection and shadows. I would really suggest you to use reflection and shadows. Don't shy away. Don't be scared. Don't think twice before using them. Use it completely. Experiment with it. Don't just stick to a very even tone kind of lights. Give some space to your subject here. Now, if you see a person here, there is a lot of space on top of him. The rickshaw here, we have a lot of space, both the sides of him. The space will tell a story automatically. The space around your subject will make sure that your viewer likes the photograph on Instagram. Your viewer leaves a comment on your Instagram that they like the photograph. The only thing is because you left the space, breathing space or head space or where they are going, things like that. Now, I would like to open the whole floor for any questions if you may have. Please feel free to ask any questions of any sorts. Which lens to be used for jewelry? Now, when it comes to the jewelry part, what you can do is you can always use a lens like a macro lens or something like a telephoto lens and all that stuff. But my suggestion for you is if you're shooting jewelry, make sure that jewelry is clean. Make sure that uh, you use alcohol based cleaner on the jewelry first, because you need to make sure that your jewelry is shiny. because unless until the jewelry had that shine in it, it won't look good. And in terms of, let's just say, lenses, go for a macro lens, go for a telephoto lens. It's very easy. Yeah. How about video tips? Do you choose app? Okay, video tips. My suggestion is that if you go for LED lights, LED lights will give you continuous light source. It will make sure that your light is always constantly there with you. When it comes to the videos, try not to use your hands. Try not to hold the camera with your hands like this as such. Use a gorilla pod, use a tripod, a monopod as well. It will help you in that way a lot. Also try to add few effects with the backgrounds for the video that can make your whole video look bit more interesting. Focus on the transition of the video, like where you're cutting the video and when you're starting it. Okay, any special tips for food photography? Well, food photography, when it comes to food photography, I would suggest if you're shooting a cooked meal, make sure that your camera, that your phone camera, your light, if you're using a window light setup, if you're using a phone camera on a tripod, it is ready, because if you waste a lot of time in setting everything up, the food will get soggy. The food will lose its essence. The smoke coming from the food, or the brightness or the color of and the texture of the food will just go away. So shoot fast, set up the plates, set up the whole setting before you bring the dish in. When you're editing the food photographs, try to not increase contrast a lot, because the moment you increase contrast a lot in editing, it will sort of kill your mood in the photo. It will also try to sort it will kill your mood to the photo. It will increase the darkness and brightness, the difference between it. It will also give a lot of warm tone to your photograph altogether. So try not to increase contrast in your editing. Try to go for a very bright and warm tones, and try to differentiate between the background. Like your table should be blue. If your table is of color blue, then plate should be of color red, something like that. Now, there is a new single take feature. It is not available in Note 10 Plus. Okay, I'm not aware of Note 10 Plus. I'm sorry. I will definitely try to, go through it before I answer such questions, because I personally use iOS to shoot on phone. I hardly use Android, so I'm sorry for that. You say 4:5, but the screen shows 4:3. Is it same? No, it's not the same. 4:3 is the default setting for most of the iOS cameras, or old iPhones, where they put 4:3. They are not the same. 4:5 vertical or horizontal. You can easily find this ratio in recent phones, recent applications, and recent editing softwares. Do you set the requirement at the outset, or do it after selecting a subject? Uh, okay, I'm not sure I understand, but I try to understand the question. Do you set the requirements at the outset, or do it after selecting the subject? Okay, uh, I'll tell you my workflow. I'll tell you my workflow first. What I do is I get the idea first. Once I have the idea noted down, like in my mind or on a piece of paper, I like to show you something, guys. I always like to carry a notebook here, my diary, which I always keep with me. If I have any idea, I write it down there, and then I go ahead and I plan the shoot completely. I plan what my background should be, what my subject should be, how my subject should look. I draw it. I sketch a lot, so I draw it completely. Then I place everything as I visualized, and then I click the photograph. That's my whole workflow. How to take good photos in dark spaces with a mobile phone? Flash ruins the pic. Definitely, as I told you, flash ruins the pic a lot. So either you can use continuous light source, like I told you, you can use. Chalo, if you don't have a light source around you, like you don't have a tube light or bulb or LED, you can use another phone to light your camera. So to light your subject, like another phone flash, like ask a phone from your friend, and light your subject with that. Or what you can do is you can buy, as I told you before itself, you can buy an LED small panel altogether to light up the whole subject altogether. Uh, what do you do when you have a moving subject? If I'm not wrong, I have told you, if I have a moving subject, I try to anticipate the movement of my subject. Like mostly I faced face this issue on street photography, that I'm shooting someone and they move immediately. So I try to anticipate beforehand, like let's just say if there is a lady who's buying bangles, so I anticipate that there would be a point where she'll pay the person, right? So I position myself right at the location where I can see the lady paying the vendor, and the moment she goes for it, I keep on clicking fast till I get the perfect shot. So I anticipate the movements of my subject, and then I shoot them before they reach there. Next is how to take good photos. Okay, now this is done. If we have questions later, how do we connect with you? You can easily connect with me on Instagram. My Instagram handle is 22mm.studio. I'll just type it here if you want me to, 22mm.studio. You can easily reach out to me here. Just text me on Instagram, and I'll definitely make sure that all of your queries are met. What do you do when you have a moving subject? If you have question later, how do you take a background black and white and the image is color? What type of setting is that? Okay, well, this is done in the post production. How it is done is, if you go to Snapseed under the tools section, go to the tools section, select the option called selective, and you can select any areas and decrease the saturation of it. This is a very simple way of attracting your viewers attention to it, but it is easily achievable only in the post production. I would suggest you not to shoot like that, because if you do it, there will be some miscalculations done by your camera and your artificial intelligence system altogether. So I would suggest you to do it only in the post production, like Snapseed and all. Do we use rule of thirds and rule of odds in selfie mode as well? Please do. I would really tell you to please use rule of thirds. Please use rule of thirds in every photo possible, because it will sort of make sure that your photos are on some other level altogether. You can club the rule of thirds with rule of odds. You can club the rule of thirds with rule of odds, the space view, all together. You can use all together completely. Good session. Thank you so much. It means a lot. Very useful session. Thank you so much. You're welcome. Thank you so much, Prithvi. Does a phone camera get problems with focus over time? I face problems with focus after 6 months or so while clicking pictures. Your phone or your system of your phone needs to be updated every time. No matter what you do, you need to update your phone cameras every time. So keep on look, like तुम्हारा system update कब आ रहा है, when is it coming, and just keep on updating as soon as possible. With time, yes, hardware does get old, and there are a lot of conspiracies which people are saying that phone companies are shortening the lifespan of the camera, so people buy their new products and all. I'm not aware of if those are true or not, but still, my suggestion is to keep on updating new updates on your phone application. Try not to keep your phone on the table with camera facing down. Reason being, if there are scratches on the surface of the phone camera, it will have a hard time to focus. Apart from that, I don't think so there should be any other issues. How to take good photos in evening parties in dark spaces with an iPhone, wherein you can't really carry a light source. Okay, recent iPhones have a night settings in itself. You cannot waste a lot of time in parties to get good photographs with the settings right there, saying ki exposure set karo. You cannot waste your time in that. But if you have a time in that, you can definitely go into expert mode. You can go and increase the exposure, and it will help you a lot. But let's just say you don't have time for that, then use the artificial light around you. Try to keep your subject under the under some light source. If there is some street light, or if there is if you're in party, if there is some light source around you, there obviously will be a light source around you always. then use that light source. Try not to shoot anyone with the bottom light. Like if a light is coming from bottom, try not to shoot that, because that will make your photo look ugly. How do you get contrast in bright sunlight? Okay, contrast is, I'll tell you what exactly contrast is. Contrast is the difference between the shadows and highlights. Like in simpler words, it's difference between dark portions and uh, pos- uh, positions which are bright. So if you want such contrast, bright sunlight will always give you a contrast. It will always give a high contrast, because there are dark shadows and there are very bright highlights as well. So for bright sunlight, what you need to do is not have, very contrasty light. Thanks a lot everyone for the attending session. Thank you so much. Great session. You're most welcome. Thank you. Can we use rule of thirds of rule of thirds or of space in wedding photography? Yes, you can. You definitely can. Let's just say, for example, if you find a very funny looking uncle walking with a big plate of food in the wedding going towards mandap, you want to capture that funny moment, right? So capture the uncle walking towards the mandap and capture the mandap as well. That will give you a lot of better, like, that will give a nice story to it. Thank you guys. I guess we had a good time. I would. Okay, few more questions. Can you say something of portraits? Arrange- Can you say something of portraits? Well, portraits, yes, portraits is one of my favorite. You require good location, good lighting, and you require a person who is willing to pose for you. So for portraits, I would suggest you to go for even tone lighting, that is towards the evening, like before 11 a.m. and after 3 p.m. You can get a nice light, even tone and warm tone in the sky. You can get those things very easily. I guess that is all for the questions. If I'm not wrong, thank you all of you to attending the session. We would be ending the session in a couple of minutes. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for attending.